Friday. I am going to wait a little bit to see if people come on. And oops, didn't mean to do that. Hello. I'm going to wait just a second. We are on. That's great. Okay. I think people are starting to climb on. We may be able to see the chat. All right. Hey, Carrie, how are you? My friend from Chicago. Haven't seen you on a live of mine in a while, so that's awesome. And we may be able to see some comments. Do you see those, Leah? Okay, great. And then some of the others will just say Facebook user or something like that. So we'll do our best. Awesome. So happy Friday, everybody. I am Rebecca Gruenspan, the founder and CEO of RG Adoption Consulting. If you are new to us, welcome. We have a special guest today, which I'm really excited about. Her name is Leah Outen. Did I pronounce that right?
That's right. Yep.
Perfect. And I am actually just going to have you introduce yourself so I don't mess anything up. And just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your family. Hi, Susan. Thank you. You are beautiful too. Leah, tell us a little bit about you and your family and why you are speaking with us here today.
Yeah. So I am a birth mom. Just short version of that, or before I dive into all that, I was 16 and she turns 18 in like a couple of weeks and graduating. So we've walked through several different seasons together. We have a very open adoption. And I was cared really well through my adoption experience. And just that's my heart, is to help other people. Since then, I have been married for 15 years and we have 5 kids together. And so it's really fun to have that whole big family experience together, in that sibling relationship that they have. And I'm in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. I work with a nonprofit for supporting the triad after placement and just helping how do you do open adoption and how do you heal. And so that's a little bit of who I am. I'm also a writer. That's another kind of important piece too. That I just love sharing my story and what's helped me so that other people can have a better experience.
Awesome. And you work with both birth parents and adoptive parents for that post-adoption, open adoption navigation piece. Yeah?
Yes, we do.
Awesome. Cool. So tell us a little bit about what led you to adoption and how you actually started to create an adoption plan once you chose adoption.
Yeah. So being 16, when I told my mom that I was pregnant, I was very lucky that she immediately got me into counseling. And so at that counseling place, it was an agency, but it also was, if I wanted a parent, they had resources there too. So I felt really unpressured by their experience of having their non-biased opinions and just working through and processing all the emotions. And so that really helped me to think through the pros and cons of everything and just where my heart was. And I really thought I was going to parent for a long time because I always wanted to be a mom. And so I thought I would just figure it out and be a single mom and do it just like my mom did. And as the months went on, though, I just didn't settle right with me to just realize, just thinking through that she wouldn't have a dad in her life. My dad was in a part of my life every other weekend. And so, but even that was hard. And I really wanted her to have more than that and have that stability of a family of people who are ready to be a parent. So I feel like around 5 or 6 months, I started to explore what adoption could look like. And I shall say that if closed adoption was all that there was, I would not have chosen adoption. It was going online and finding other adoptive moms that were in open adoption and birth moms that were in open adoption. That helped me to see that there were other options within adoption, that I could still see her and know her, and for her to know me and to know that I love her and that my choice was not one of rejection or not wanting her, but that it was just trying to provide something different than what I could offer at that point. So learning about open adoption completely changed my view of adoption. And that's where I started to talk with my counselor of like, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm exploring. And there was just one day that it really hit me of what her life would look like, and that it would be difficult and be a lot like the life that I grew up in with a single mom. And nothing against single moms. Like, I know we're all doing the best we can do, and my mom did too, but it was, I just really just felt that desire and heart that she needed a stable family, and not have a mom who was still growing up herself. So I just felt there were about 7 months that we became really, really clear that that's what I was supposed to do. And I just felt peace in that finally, because I couldn't feel that peace of parenting. And so I told her, my counselor, I'm ready to look at families. And so I was looking at families who already had a child, because I wanted to guarantee she would have a sibling. Obviously, someone who wanted that open adoption relationship, and someone who was in the same state so that we could have those visits and things easier. I think that was about it. Those are the main things. And so we formed a relationship this last 2 months. We met several times, and they were just incredible at, we just clicked really easily. Like I could describe it kind of like soulmates. You just know it just feels right and it's peaceful. And so from there, we built that relationship, and there were a lot of kind of signs, coincidences that kept popping up. Like, I had named her already when I thought I was going to parent, and that they picked a nearly identical name, same middle name. The last syllable of the first name was the only thing that was different. So it was just one of those things of like, oh yeah, we can absolutely work with this. We can. And so it's neat. We got to name her kind of together, but it still was the name I gave her. And we had the same kind of dog, and there's just little similarities and things that really drew me to them. And of course, they're just heart for me, that they loved me. And, they joked that they adopted me into their family at the same time, and just really made it known that it wasn't just about the baby, but it was about making this kind of blended family together. So that, just led to that trust of them and building that relationship.
I love that. And I love that you said it was those little similarities, because so many people, as they're creating their profile, they speak in such broad terms. And I'm like, no, it's those little things, like,
Yes.
Well, in your case, your pet and the name, which you found out later, but sometimes it's what you eat for breakfast every day. You just don't know what's going to connect you with somebody else. So I love that you mentioned that, and also just how beautiful it can be to do things together as you are establishing a relationship.
Yeah.
So without naming names, we don't need to know which agency you worked with on your adoption, but I'd love to know how you think your agency supported you well, and what you wished would have been different.
I feel incredibly lucky that my experience was a very positive one. I felt incredibly supported through the entire time, because I had counseling from day one and up through probably at least a year or two after placement. Obviously that dwindled down some, but I'm still in touch with my social worker today, even though she's left the agency. Like, that bond was there, and I felt completely supported, not pressured by my parents or by my the agency we worked with. And so I think that's a big thing, is that it truly was my decision, and I had someone to really process through all those thoughts and feelings and emotions, both before I made my decision and while we were walking through this open adoption together, up until placement, and then a few years after. So I just had that counseling support was the number one thing. And I think we were our first open adoption of our agency back then. And so we were kind of figuring it out together, but they still were just very much, this is all, you're in the driver's seat. This is your decision. And so there wasn't really much else offered as far as like birth mom support or anything like that at that point. But I had found that online separately, thankfully. And I think the only kind of negative thing that I wished was a little bit different was in the hospital, that I wished I knew the importance of breast milk, and I was not given the option of pumping. Breastfeeding was really discouraged, understandably, because you're concerned about bonding and things like that. Not that bonding is a bad thing, but it's just difficult when you're making a really difficult decision. But I wish that even pumping had been an option to kind of compromise that. But that's kind of the only thing that that I kind of wish was a little handled differently.
Okay, hopeful parents, take notes. I know people do get scared about that, but that's a beautiful thing when it can happen, for the birth mom to be able to pump for the child or even breastfeed those first couple days. What does open adoption mean to you?
For us, I mean, I describe it as a different kind of blended family. It's having communication, it's having trust, it's having respect for our different roles. That I know I'm not her mom, and she fills a completely different role than I do, but my role as a birth mom is still honored. Um, just being able to watch her grow and to be here to answer her questions as she's grown older has been really special. Um, I mean, at Abiding Love, we like to say creating one big family, and that's basically what it is, because extra love is never a bad thing.
And I'd love to ask you, if you're watching, what does open adoption mean to you? If you could write it in the chat, we'd love to see that, because your answer is not wrong.
Mhm.
I mean, it's so much.
There's so many different experiences and
Yeah.
and what it looks like for everybody. Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking about it for myself. How would I put it into words? Extended family, complicated in layers.
There you go. All the things.
Knowing too much information and at the same time not knowing enough. Let's see, Carrie said access to family for my child.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that her mom will like call me before she has a well visit. And she's like, is there anything I need to know? Is there any updated? Like, she has access to me to do that. So it's been really neat. Or talking about how asking, because she's a lot like me, she'll call me and be like, how did you handle this part in your life? How did you overcome this? Because your personality is so much like hers. And so it's fun to have that.
Someone said open adoption means having more supportive relationships for your baby, helping them go through the grief more easily about the loss of the birth mom. That's beautiful, Laura. Thank you. Debbie says open adoption to me means giving my child a connection to the history of their story, to their history and their story. More love for my daughter. And then a modern blended family bound together by love. These are beautiful. I love that. So talk to me a little bit about, first of all, do you know if the family that you placed your child with, were they also seeking open adoption? Keep those answers coming. I love it. But were they also seeking that right away?
They were, because they had adopted before, which is one of the things I was looking for.
Okay.
And their relationship was very different. It was more of the which is what was more common back in the early 2000s, was the semi-open, and you only had contact through the agency for the most part. And so that really limited communication, really desired for them to have more access to me and to share these little milestones and things that were popping up as he was growing. They're like, oh, I wish she could see this. I wish she could see this picture. I wish she could, he made this amazing picture, or he graduated kindergarten today, and they couldn't do that as easily and as quickly as they wanted to. So that relationship helped both of us to really come to the table with one and the same exact experience of just coming together and be personal friends, and not having the agency and things be in the middle of it. So yeah.
So how has that relationship evolved through the years? And also, what's your relationship like with their other child?
Our relationship is that what you're asking?
Yeah. How has tell me about the path of your relationship with your adoptive family and with your
Mhm.
daughter since you've placed, and also how their other child
Yeah.
came into play.
Yeah. So, well, addressing her brother first, it was talked about in the very first interview that, he doesn't have this. And so we want to make sure that he's always included into it. And so, we're a package deal, is what they said. And so we've, including my parents and all those things, like we're all truly one family. And we just, if we buy her a gift, we buy him a gift at Christmas and things like that, and just love on him and support him. And I wouldn't say we're close, as obviously my birth daughter and I are, but I definitely enjoy catching up with him and watching him grow and supporting him as he's become an adult. And he actually says that we're more of a birth family than his own birth family because we've just been able to be involved more and love on him. So I'm glad that we can be, we'll never replace them, but we can kind of substitute and be an extended family for him too. But so the relationship with their family in general was I requested 2 visits a year, every summer, every December. And we had that written down and notarized as kind of a agreement that probably wouldn't have held up in court, but it was like our expectations are on paper. And we both agreed to them. And then we quickly went above and beyond. And for the first 3 years, we were together about once a month. I often would go visit them. I was quickly invited into their home and I would stay the night because we just clicked really easily and we had built that trust together. Me being in high school, finishing up things there, I had more time. And so I would spend a lot of weekends with them. And it was really wonderful to see her grow very often and to watch her meet milestones and that she would still recognize me and I could still be a part of her daily life, to have some moments of caring for her, feeding her a bottle, and then also see how hard parenting is. And like, I'm glad they're the parents and I can just, go back home, because it made it very clear that I had made the right decision. It reaffirmed my decision over and over again that she was where she was meant to be. And I still had growing up to do. And it was really wonderful. That's where our foundation was really formed in those first 3 years of sitting around the dinner table, talking about everything from, our childhoods to, how we envision her future to look like with us, in open adoption. And so that's where a lot of that respect was built and the trust was built deeper, and envisioning what life will look like. So and then around the elementary years, things went way back down to the 2 visits a year because everybody just got busier. That's when I got married and started having kids, and they were busier, and that's what worked in that season. And then around 10 or so, she was starting to have more questions, and because we had 10 years of that relationship built under us, they didn't hesitate when she said, "Hey, I'd like to go stay the night at Miss Leah's house." And so that created a new tradition and more one-on-one time where our relationship shifted a little bit between her mom and I being the most connected ones to having a more direct relationship with my birth daughter. And so since then, into the teenage years, we visit about quarterly because that's what we feel for her and I. It helps our grief, to have some kind of connection every 3 months or so. And that's usually a mix of one-on-one time and a mix of kind of giant family time with like her siblings or grandparents and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really wonderful in this teen years, just truly beyond what I ever imagined that it could be, because we have built this healthy relationship and that nobody's threatened by the different roles. And we can, as someone mentioned, that she can walk through that grief with me, as she started to process and feel things even more. But also we can circle back around to like, we know that this is the best thing for her, and she can acknowledge both sides and all that's honored. But it's not fun, but it's really neat that we can experience all the feelings together. So that's kind of where we are now.
So I have to say, it all sounds a little bit like a fairy tale.
It does, but it's not always easy for sure. It takes
So
a lot of work.
okay, so tell me a little. So I'm curious as you're talking. I'm like, has it always been this bed of roses? Which, if so, that's wonderful, and it sounds like really great. First of all, I want you all listening to know this is one person's story, and
It does not all look like this.
it does not all look the same. In fact, no two look the same. But have you ever had any issues with boundaries or tough conversations or
Mhm.
or thoughts of doubts on either side, or where one has felt the power struggle over the other? Have you felt that?
Of course, we've walked through all those kinds of things, and I think that's where um, those early years of establishing good communication was really important, so that we can have these hard conversations. So we've talked through me sharing my story more and how they were a little reserved about that and hesitant because they're very private people. So having to come to a compromise of how can I share my story without crossing boundaries unintentionally. We've talked about, what's okay to share, what's okay not to share pictures or story wise. We've talked through visits for her can be hard sometimes when she comes home. It kind of, for both of us, can kind of prick that primal wound for both of us. And so that's been a conversation and adjustment of, okay, what is best for her and what is she asking for and what do we need to tweak so that it's easier when she comes home. All kinds of things.
And
All
it
kinds of
sounds like
things.
you guys live close to each other too, which is
We're about 2 hours apart.
okay. So
Yeah.
driving distance, which is also
Driving.
very different for many people. I'm going to
Yes.
pause for a second and just say, if you have any questions for Leah, please write them in
Yeah.
the chat, and we'll be happy to address them. So, Leah, there are a lot of hopeful families that are very nervous about open adoption.
Mhm.
What can you tell them to ease them into that? And then I'm going to kind of go into, there are probably some spaces where visits or being together might not be the safest. So
Mhm.
let's start with just, how would you ease somebody who is really fearful about open adoption to open up a bit?
Yes. I would say that I've worked with like hundreds of prospective adoptive families. And a lot of times seeing a birth mother face that we're not all scary. And truthfully, at the heart of all the birth moms I know is that we just love our child and we just want to be um, honored and we just want to watch our child grow and to see how happy and healthy they are. That's all what we really want. It's not to take over. It's not to take our baby back. It's none of that stuff. It's truly, we just want to be a part of their life so that we can still be connected with them. And I think one thing that my story shows, especially as our daughter's older now, is that she reaps the reward of the work we put into this relationship that we have together as friends, and not in a co-parenting way. They make all of the parenting decisions, medical, where she goes to school, when she gets her driver's license, like all that is them, and I fully respect that. Um, it's just being an extra person in her life that is a reflection of her biology and that helps her to know her identity more. And that is healthier for her. And it also it's just more love. So I I understand that it can be hard to, it's hard on a birth mom too. It can be hard to share. I think it comes down to not really checking your heart of why you're scared. Is it because you're scared of them, a birth mom taking your place or taking your role as they get older? And that's usually not the case if you can do things healthfully, and not be threatened by her place, and just knowing that she's important too and that a child can love both. One thing that I always share too is that blended family in a lot of America is having a mom and a stepmom, which I grew up with. And I can absolutely love my mom for the biological connections and for her raising me, and go to her for certain things. But I have a stepmom I've known for all my life as well, and that I love both of them equally, but they have different roles and different talents and different things they bring into my life. And it's kind of the same thing with having a mom and a birth mom. And so if that's your experience too, where you've been able to love two different moms or two different dads, or you have another family member who is in that kind of role, or a special aunt or something, it's a lot like that. That's kind of how I describe it. Of my relationship with our daughter is more of an aunt role, whereas we are biologically connected, and she might come over and she might seek advice from me, but I'm not her mom. And that's just how it doesn't have to be scary. And those boundaries and those relationships can look really different for everybody. Ours is just very, very open because that's what we are comfortable with. And that's what we have worked to have. So it can look very different for lots of different people.
For sure. I mean, what if a parent deems the biological parent not safe to physically be with, but maybe she had wanted an open adoption? How do you guide people on that?
First of all, I would think through what is actually safe versus just uncomfortable. Is it uncomfortable because just because maybe she is on drugs, or maybe she is in jail, or there's some kind of things that are, or there's so many things. So it's uncomfortable versus unsafe is a different thing. I've known many, I feel like you can still have a connection in a safe way with having boundaries. Like, don't give them money. Don't maybe not invite them into your house, but you can have connections in other ways, or meeting in a public space, or, have an email set aside for them where you can give them updates, or, texting, or doing FaceTime, or doing other things that is within there. But again, most of the time, birth moms are not in a place where they're wanting to overstep or to take over or to be unsafe. They just want to see how their child is doing. And so I've seen open adoptions work, obviously at a distance, but they still have an open adoption with a lot of love and respect, and gifts still sent and things like that, because they know that relationship is important to their child, and they fight for that. So I think checking your heart and just making sure that you're not using it as an excuse to not have a relationship, but to also just think through what the future looks like, and just loving them for where they are in their lifestyle.
I love that safety versus comfort.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it's also important to know that seasons change.
Yes.
Right. So
Very
don't
true.
close your heart for good. And something might look very different today than it looks before. I loved your comment about the stepmom, because she is also a stepmom. So she loved that. Kathy asked, any thoughts or recommendations on how to approach an expectant mom that doesn't seem to want to build a relationship? I want to love on her, but respect her boundaries. Great question.
Yeah, this does happen sometimes. I know, it takes two. It takes two people to have a relationship. And I think what I've seen from the birth mother community, that sometimes birth moms have a fear of being too involved, or too attached, or too connected will hinder their healing, or it'll make it harder, or it'll just be hard to see them call someone else mom. But I think one thing that has helped is there's becoming more statistics of adoptees who are older having open adoption, that it helps the child. And so maybe phrasing it that way of, we want anything for our child at the center, to know that these important pieces of who they are, and that's a big part of you. But a lot of times you can't control what the other side does on either way. I can't control what her adoptive parents do and vice versa, but we can keep showing up and keep opening that door. Don't close the door just because she's resistant right now, because again, with the seasons, how she's feeling right now, 5 years later, she may be like, oh, I'm ready for this and I want this. So making sure consistently you're reaching out, and we're here if you want to have a FaceTime, if you want to visit, if you want to update. We would love an update from you. Just making sure that they know that door is always open.
Yeah, and sometimes I realize you don't have direct each other's contact information. You have to go through either a software or an agency. One of the things I always suggest is, if you, however you are able to communicate, put your email or your phone number in there and invite them to reach out when they are comfortable, so that they have a way to do that. Don't make them do the work. Make it easy for them if and when they are ready. I love that. So I know one of your roles now is to support adoptive families and biological families, birth families, to navigate their relationship post-adoption. What does that look like?
So at Abiding Love Charities, we were kind of formed out of the gap of there's just not a lot of post-placement care, especially for birth moms. So we have 3 different tiers that we're building and growing. And the first tier is birth moms, because there's a lot of agencies who say they're doing things and it's very, very small, or they're not really doing it. So we wanted to step in, and we have a grant program for birth moms, so that if they have a financial need, if they need help getting counseling so they can heal, if they have, their water bills getting cut off and they have an emergency, that we're able to help them with things like that. We have a mentor program. We have a few birth moms on our team that they're welcome to, if they need someone to listen to or talk to who's walked this path. We have birth mom support groups that are going across the nation that launches next month. So I'm really excited for that. And tier 2 is adoptive parents. And so currently right now, coaching calls with me is one of those. And just being able to talk through, having a one-on-one conversation, a lot like this, talking through specific things and challenges and issues that you have within your adoption, and getting ideas and feedback and asking questions from a birth mother perspective. And then we have other support groups and things like that launching as well. So
that's awesome. So how can people either reach out to you if they're feeling like they need, like, can anybody reach out and get that support to help navigate?
Yes.
And how would they do that?
Anybody, anywhere, no matter who you placed through or who you worked with, any of that. We want to be a support for anybody nationally.
And how would they do that?
abidinglovecharities.org. And then you're welcome to message me on Instagram at Leah Outen, or find me on Facebook. I'm pretty available, or you go to my website, leahouten.com. Any of those.
Awesome. Do you have room for a time for one more question, or are we out of time? Okay,
Yep,
out of time. All right. So someone asked, we haven't heard from our son's birth mom yet, though we continue to send monthly update pictures via email. I hadn't thought of saying we would love to hear from you and how you're doing. I don't know, I don't want to sound too pushy or anything, but would genuinely love to hear how she's doing. How do you think that's an okay? Do you think it's an okay thing to write?
I would say yes, because it shows that you care about her too, and it's not just about your child. One thing that I think a lot of birth moms struggle with, even if we're told, we want you here, we love you, reach out to us anytime, it's still really hard to reach out and ask for anything or to share how we're doing. And so giving that invitation is a really beautiful thing to show her. We want this. We want to hear from you. We want a relationship with you. And maybe she doesn't yet, but she still will start seeing that this is a consistent request and that you're wanting that when she's ready.
Yeah, or maybe even saying what you said, but saying, is it okay to send you a picture? I would love to share. I don't want to overstep, let me know. And that might get the conversation rolling, like asking a specific question for an answer, but not expecting anything in return. Yeah. Is that a good piece of advice?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Leah, thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom and just sharing your story. I think it's always really helpful for people to hear from all different sides of the triad. And open adoption can be sticky and beautiful and all the things that we talked about. And there are supports for you out there and places for you to just listen in and learn. So I always encourage everybody to continue to do so. It's kind of, adoption is a lifetime journey. So hopefully you're on that ride, and I appreciate you so much, Leah, and thank you for rescheduling with us.
Oh yeah. Thank you for your flexibility too.
No problem. Okay. Have a great Friday and enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.